So the Daily Telegraph provided 1,000 guineas for George Smith to go out to Iraq and to find the missing piece, as if it was as easy as that. But he did actually go to Nineveh twice, and he did find the missing piece of the flood story, believe it or not.
The world's oldest story has a new secret chapter. Assyriologist Andrew George, after decades of painstaking work, has finally spoken. He presented a complete vision of Gilgamesh, and the academic world is reeling. What he found in the dust of Iraq and the basements of museums isn't just more poetry. It's a terrifyingly modern story of trauma, a real place hidden from history, and a message from a long-dead king that experts completely misunderstood. What he found changes the very meaning of the epic. Andrew George's Great Puzzle. When you think of an expert, you probably picture someone in a lab coat or a stuffy professor in a tweed jacket. But Andrew George is different. For all intents and purposes, he's a code breaker. He's a linguistic detective. His specialty isn't computers or secret government messages. No, he deals with something far older. He cracks codes that are 4,000 years old. Andrew George is an Assyriologist. That means he studies the languages, history, and culture of ancient Mesopotamia. Think Babylon, Assyria, and Sumer. And his lifelong obsession is one single, broken, impossibly ancient story, the Epic of Gilgamesh. For decades, from his office at the University of London, George has been on a quiet quest. His mission? To find every last broken piece of this story and put it back together. And get this, he basically did it. But here's the catch, the story wasn't just scattered, it was shattered. We're not talking about a ripped book, we're talking about tens of thousands of clay fragments dug up from the sands of Iraq. These tablets are inscribed with cuneiform, that wedge-shaped writing that looks like chicken scratches. Cuneiform isn't even a language. It's a system of writing used for multiple languages like Akkadian and Sumerian. It's ridiculously hard to read. Now imagine trying to read it when 90% of the text is missing. That's what experts were facing. The Epic of Gilgamesh, our planet's very first hero's journey, was a puzzle with most of the pieces gone. For 100 years, scholars did their best, filling in the blanks with guesswork. They gave us a story of a superhero king who fights a monster, loses his best friend, and then gets scared of passing away, so he searches for eternal life. A simple, powerful myth. But Andrew George wasn't satisfied with good enough. He traveled to museums all over the world. He hunted through dusty drawers in the British Museum. He corresponded with curators in Baghdad. He was looking for the pieces everyone else missed. And one by one, he found them. His work culminated in his 2003 translation. It's the one you'll find in most bookstores, the Penguin Classics edition. But this wasn't just another translation. It was a revelation. It was so complete, so clear, and filled with so many new lines and corrected details that it made all the old versions obsolete. This is what stunned experts. George wasn't just a translator. He was a restorer. He took a blurry, out-of-focus picture and brought it into sharp, high definition. And the picture he revealed was not the one they were expecting. What most people don't realize is that George's work never stopped. He kept finding new fragments. He kept refining the text. And a discovery made just a few years ago added a piece of the puzzle that changed everything. It was a part of the story that had been missing for millennia. When he spoke, when he published his findings on this new piece, it sent a shockwave through the quiet world of ancient history. Because the new lines didn't just add details, they changed the entire meaning of Gilgamesh's journey. They pointed to a real place, a real event, and a psychological depth that experts had always dismissed as fantasy. The stunning truth was that Gilgamesh wasn't just a myth. It was a 4,000-year-old warning, and Andrew George was the first person in modern history to finally read it. But before we get to what he found, you have to understand how this story was found in the first place. Because the crazy part is, Andrew George wasn't the first George to be stunned by these clay tablets. 150 years ago, another man stared at these same markings and made a discovery that literally stopped his heart and changed the world forever. This first discovery nearly tore society apart. The Great Flood Secret. So here's the deal. We have to go back to the 1840s. A brilliant, adventurous British archaeologist named Austen Henry Layard is digging in the desert of what is now northern Iraq. He's looking for the biblical city of Nineveh, and long story short, he finds it. He unearths giant palaces, massive statues of winged bulls with human heads, and entire libraries. But these aren't libraries of books, they are libraries of clay. Specifically, he finds the royal library of Ashurbanipal, an Assyrian king who lived around 650 BC. This king was no ordinary ruler. He was a scholar. He was obsessed with collecting all the knowledge of his world. He sent scribes all over Mesopotamia to copy every story, every poem, every medical text, every omen, and every magic spell they could find. He gathered over 30,000 of these clay tablets in his library, and then his empire collapsed. Nineveh was burned, the palace walls fell in, and this entire treasure trove of knowledge was buried and forgotten for 2,500 years. All these tablets, tens of thousands of them, most smashed to bits, were packed into crates and shipped back to the British Museum in London. And there they sat in the basement, a giant, dusty, unreadable pile of broken pottery. Enter George Smith. It's 1872. Smith is not a wealthy aristocrat or a university professor. He's a working-class guy, a banknote engraver's apprentice, who was so obsessed with the Bible and ancient history that he taught himself to read cuneiform in his spare time. He was so good at it that the British Museum eventually hired him to help sort through the tablet pile. One day, Smith is sifting through the fragments. He picks up a piece, part of the Gilgamesh story, though it wasn't really called that yet. He starts to translate. His eyes get wider. He reads about a king, a warning from a god, and instructions to build a huge boat. He reads about loading animals onto the boat in twos. He reads about a great storm, a flood that covers the world, and the boat landing on a mountain. He reads about the man sending out a dove and then a raven. Smith's hands are shaking. He's just read the story of Noah's Ark. But here's the catch. This wasn't the Bible. This tablet was written in Akkadian cuneiform. It was from Mesopotamia, and it was, without a doubt, 1,000 years older than the oldest surviving texts of the Book of Genesis. The story goes that George Smith, upon realizing what he was reading, leaped to his feet and, to the astonishment of his colleagues, began to unfasten his clothes. He was so overcome with emotion he had to strip off his coat and tie. He was stunned. On December 3rd, 1872, he presented his findings. The room was packed. The reaction was explosive. This was the age of Darwin. People's faith was already being challenged by science. And now this self-taught engraver was telling them that the story of Noah's flood, one of the sacred pillars of Judeo-Christian belief, was a copy. A story borrowed from an older pagan civilization. It was a global sensation. The Daily Telegraph newspaper was so excited they funded an expedition for Smith to go to Nineveh himself and find the missing pieces of the tablet. And the crazy part? He did. In a needle-in-a-haystack moment, he walked through the excavation site, kicked over some dirt, and found a fragment that filled in a crucial blank in the story. This discovery is what put Gilgamesh on the map, but it also overshadowed everything else in the epic. For the next 100 years, everyone was obsessed with Gilgamesh and the flood. The rest of the story, the monster in the forest, the odd details about the king's grief, was just seen as mythological fluff. The experts had their answer. Gilgamesh was important because it proved the Bible had older sources. They filed it away, case closed. They didn't realize that the flood story was just a story within the story. It was a distraction. And the real secret, the part that Andrew George would uncover a century later, was hidden in the lines they couldn't find or didn't bother to look for. The flood was just the cover story. The real secret was in the forest. The truth about Humbaba. Fast forward through 100 years of scholarship. We're back with Andrew George. He spent his entire adult life hunting for those missing pieces. He's retranslated every word, cross-referenced every fragment. His 2003 translation was a masterpiece, but even he knew there were still gaps. One of the biggest gaps was in Tablet 5. This is the part of the story where the hero, Gilgamesh, and his wild man best friend Enkidu travel to a place called the Cedar Forest to fight a monster named Humbaba. In all the old translations, this part was very vague. It was spooky, dark, and mythical. A forest of 10,000 leagues, a dark and trackless wood. Humbaba was a fierce giant with a fiery breath. It all sounded like a standard fairy tale. A hero goes to a magic forest to dispatch a dragon. Experts treated it as pure allegory, man versus nature, or order versus chaos. But Andrew George felt something was off. The details didn't quite line up. Then, in 2011, the stunning moment happened. A curator at a museum in Sulaymaniyah in the Kurdistan region of Iraq was working with a private collector. The collector had a clay tablet that had been, let's say, unofficially acquired. The curator, Farouk al-Rawi, who happened to be a colleague of Andrew George, looked at the tablet. He realized with a jolt what he was holding. He immediately contacted George. The tablet was a pristine, beautifully preserved section of Tablet 5. It wasn't just a few words, it was 20 brand new lines of the Epic of Gilgamesh that no one in the modern world had ever read. Andrew George and al-Rawi got to work. What they translated and published in 2014 is what stunned experts. The new lines described the cedar forest, and it was not a dark, spooky, mythical place. The crazy part is, the text described it as a vibrant, noisy, and very real jungle. Gilgamesh and Enkidu didn't just walk in silence, they stood and marveled at the forest. They saw the cedar trees, their shade full of delight, and it wasn't empty. The new lines described the forest as being alive with the sounds of monkeys. The noisy cry of the Gabara monkey. The forest was abuzz with the Sisu cricket. It describes a rich, complex ecosystem. This wasn't a myth. This was an eyewitness description of a real place. And then there was Humbaba. In the old text, he's just a monster. But the new lines, combined with George's retranslation of other parts, revealed something incredible. Humbaba wasn't a giant. He was a guardian. The text says the god Enlil appointed him to guard the forest, to be its terror. And get this, his fiery breath and terrifying roar? The new lines gave it a totally different context. Humbaba was entertained by the sounds of the jungle. He was, in a way, the voice of the jungle itself. He was an ancient protector of a real, specific, and sacred natural wonder, likely the cedar forests of the Amanus Mountains, which are now in modern-day Turkey. This is what floored the experts. They had spent a century dismissing the story as a simple myth. But Andrew George's meticulous work, capped by this incredible new discovery, proved it was anything but. The story was grounded in reality. The locations were real. The descriptions were from life. And if the place was real, what about the journey? This is where the stunning revelation truly clicks. The experts had missed the point. The story wasn't about a superhero fighting a monster. It was about two men who invade a protected, beautiful place and in an act of profound arrogance cut it down and dispatch its guardian. This wasn't a heroic quest. It was an offense, an act of hubris. And it was this act, this crime against nature, that sets the entire tragedy of Gilgamesh in motion. The gods, furious at this violation, decree that one of the friends must perish. Suddenly, the whole epic pivots. It's not a fairy tale, it's a tragedy. And it's about to become the most profound and painfully realistic story of grief ever written. The king's greatest battle wasn't with a monster, it was with his own mind. Not a quest, but a breakdown. So let's reset the story using Andrew George's sharp, clear translation. It all starts with Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. He's described as 2/3 god, 1/3 human. He's powerful, he's handsome, he's a brilliant builder, and he's a total tyrant. He's arrogant and cruel. His people are miserable. So they pray to the gods for help. The gods have a clever idea. They don't smite Gilgamesh. Instead, they create his equal. They make a wild man named Enkidu. Enkidu is covered in hair, lives in the wild, and runs with the animals. He's the complete opposite of the civilized Gilgamesh. Long story short, Enkidu is brought to the city of Uruk. He and Gilgamesh, two alpha males, immediately have a massive wrestling match in the street. They are perfectly matched. They fight to a standstill, and in that moment, they recognize each other. They stop fighting, embrace, and become inseparable. It is quite literally the first bromance in all of human literature. This friendship changes Gilgamesh. It softens him. It gives him an equal. For the first time, he cares about someone other than himself. But now he's got all this energy and a new best friend. So he gets a great idea. Let's go make a name for ourselves. Let's go to the cedar forest, cut down the sacred trees, and dispatch the guardian Humbaba. Enkidu, who knows the forest, says, "This is a terrible idea. It's sacred. The guardian is terrifying." But Gilgamesh, still arrogant, bullies him into it. As we now know from Andrew George's work, they travel to a real place, a vibrant forest, and in an act of hubris, they dispatch its guardian and clear-cut the trees. They return to Uruk as heroes. But the gods are furious. The god Enlil, protector of the earth, is outraged. A council is held and a judgment is passed. One of them must perish, and they choose Enkidu. This is the pivot of the entire epic. Enkidu has a terrible dream, falls sick, and after 12 agonizing days, he passes away and Gilgamesh breaks. What most people don't realize is how raw this next part is. This is where Andrew George's translation is so powerful. It's not just Gilgamesh was sad, it is a graphic, clinical, and terrifying description of a complete psychological breakdown. Gilgamesh clutched at his hair and tore it out in clumps. He ripped off his fine clothes as if they were foul. He doesn't just cry, he roars, he paces back and forth like a lioness robbed of her cubs. He refuses to believe Enkidu is gone. He sits with the body for 7 days and 7 nights. He talks to it. He waits for it to move. He only accepts the reality of his friend's passing when, as the text graphically states, a maggot fell out of his nostril. Only then does he allow the burial, and in that moment something new is born in him. Terror. For the first time, the two-thirds God King realizes that he will also perish. "What my brother is now, that shall I be," he shrieks. This is the trauma. This is the core of the story. His grief is so profound, his fear of his own end is so all-consuming that he cannot function. He abandons his throne. He abandons his city. He dresses in animal skins just like Enkidu used to, and he starts to run. This isn't a quest for immortality. That's the simple version. What Andrew George's translation shows is that this is a trauma response. It's a man broken by grief, literally running from his own mortality. He's not just seeking eternal life, he's in the grip of a psychological crisis, desperate to find an answer to the one question that now haunts him. How can I not perish? He's chasing a rumor, a whisper of a man who supposedly did beat it. A man named Utnapishtim, the sole survivor of the Great Flood. He finds the one man who supposedly beat the end, but the answer he got wasn't the one he wanted. The tavern keeper knew. Gilgamesh's journey is desperate. He crosses mountains, deserts, and even the waters of death. He's a shadow of his former self, gaunt, weathered, and half-mad with grief. On his journey, he comes to a tavern at the edge of the world. It's run by a wise woman, a tavern keeper named Siduri. She sees this wild, haunted man and is afraid, but he tells her his story, and she gives him what might be the most important advice in the entire epic. She tells him, "Gilgamesh, where are you hurrying? You will never find that life for which you are looking. When the gods created man, they allotted him to perish, but life they retained in their own keeping. As for you, Gilgamesh, fill your belly with good things. Day and night, dance and be merry. Let your clothes be fresh. Bathe yourself in water. Cherish the little child that holds your hand and make your wife happy in your embrace. For this too is the lot of man. It is, word for word, a seize the day message. 4,000 years before the Romans. She's telling him, stop running, go live. But Gilgamesh is too deep in his trauma. He can't listen. He rejects her advice and pushes on, obsessed with finding the one man who got away. Finally, he finds him, Utnapishtim, and he asks him the question, how did you find eternal life? Utnapishtim tells him the whole story, the Great Flood, the boat, the animals. This is the part George Smith found back in 1872. But here's the catch. Utnapishtim tells him it was a one-time deal. The gods felt bad for what they did, so they made me and my wife immortal. It will never happen again. You're out of luck. Gilgamesh is crushed, but Utnapishtim gives him one last symbolic test. If you want to beat the end, he says, first try to beat its cousin, sleep. Stay awake for 7 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh has done the impossible. He has crossed the globe, faced monsters, and even traversed the waters of death to find the only immortal man, Utnapishtim. He is here for one thing, the secret to eternal life. But Utnapishtim, the ancient survivor, just looks at this powerful, desperate king. He sees a man running from the one thing no man can outrun. He decides to give him a test, a simple one. He tells Gilgamesh, "You want to defy death? You want to have the power of a god? First, let's see if you can defy something much simpler. Let's see if you can defy sleep. The test is this: just stay awake for 7 days and 7 nights." Gilgamesh, the hero who killed the bull of heaven and the monster Humbaba, probably scoffs. Stay awake? That's it? But he is exhausted. He is shattered from his journey, from his grief. The text is brutal in its honesty. Gilgamesh sits down and immediately falls asleep. He doesn't just doze off. He is out cold. He sleeps for 1 day, 2 days, 3. He sleeps for 7 solid days without stirring. To prove it, to give him a visual, Utnapishtim tells his wife to bake a loaf of bread for every single day he's asleep. A new loaf every 24 hours. When Gilgamesh finally wakes up, he's groggy, confused. He probably insists he just blinked. Utnapishtim just points. Look. Gilgamesh sees the 7 loaves of bread lined up in a row. The first loaf is fresh, the second is a little stale, the third is hard. By the 7th loaf, it's a disgusting, moldy, rock-hard brick. It's the physical proof of his failure. He couldn't even stay awake. He failed. He cannot conquer sleep, so how in any world could he ever hope to conquer death? This is the moment the quest shatters. It's a total failure. He has found no answers. He has found no magic secret. He is, in the end, just a man. He is broken. He's about to be sent home, a complete failure, empty-handed and humiliated. But as a small parting gift, maybe out of pity, Utnapishtim's wife pulls him aside. She whispers a secret. There is something. It's not eternal life, no. That's off the table. But at the very bottom of the ocean, in the darkest, deepest part of the world, there is a plant. A thorny, special plant. It doesn't stop death, but it can do the next best thing. It can restore youth. It can make an old man young again. This is it. A new hope. Gilgamesh is electrified. He can't live forever, but he can be young again. He can bring this back to Uruk. This is a prize. This is a victory. Desperate for something to show for his journey, he ties heavy stones to his feet, takes a deep breath, and sinks to the crushing dark bottom of the ocean. And he finds it. He actually finds it, his hands bleeding from the thorns. He's overjoyed. He has it. He'll take it back to Uruk, he decides, and give it to the old men of the city first to prove its power. And then he'll take it himself. He can still be a hero. He starts the long, long journey home. He has his prize. He's finally feeling like a king again. He's so close to home. He stops to bathe in a cool, fresh spring. Just for a minute. He's feeling good. He leaves the plant, the single most valuable thing in the world, on the shore. What could possibly happen in just 1 minute? And while he's not looking, a snake slithers out from the rocks. It's drawn to the magic of the plant. It slithers over, eats the plant in one bite, and immediately it sheds its skin. Right there. It's reborn. Young again. It slithers off, renewed, leaving its old, dried-out skin on the riverbank. It's gone. His last hope. His one tiny victory. Stolen by a serpent. And here in this moment of total, crushing, almost comical defeat, the epic comes to its stunning conclusion. Gilgamesh has nothing. He is empty-handed. He failed the test of sleep. He failed to get immortality. He failed to even hold on to the consolation prize. He finally arrives back at his home, the city of Uruk. He's no longer a god king. He's just a man. A tired, grieving, failed man. He walks up to the walls of his city, the massive, towering walls that he built back when he was an arrogant tyrant, and he just looks at them. He really looks at them, maybe for the first time. He turns to his boatman, Ur-Shanabi, the only one who saw his final, pathetic failure. And in the final lines of the main story, he says, "Go up, Ur-Shanabi, walk on the ramparts of Uruk. Inspect the base, view the brickwork. Is not its brickwork of burnt brick? And did not the 7 sages lay its foundations?" He's not weeping, he's not screaming, he's acting like a building inspector. He's obsessed with the details of the brickwork. He gestures out over his kingdom. 1 square mile is city, 1 square mile is orchards, 1 square mile is clay pits. 3 square miles in the temple precinct. See the city of Uruk. This is it. This is the revelation. In that moment, he finally understands. He finally gets what Siduri, the tavern keeper at the edge of the world, tried to tell him. She had told him, Gilgamesh, the gods keep life for themselves. Death is for mankind. So stop running, go home, cherish your family, eat good food, wear fine clothes. That is the life of a man. He didn't listen then, he understands now. Immortality isn't about living forever, it's about what you leave behind. It's the city he built. It's the walls that will protect his people long after he is gone. It's the family he should have been cherishing. It's the story that will be told about him. That is the only immortality mortals get. This is what the great translator Andrew George said. This is what his complete, crystal-clear translation laid bare for the modern world. The experts were stunned. For decades, they were looking for a myth about gods and monsters, a hero's quest. But George revealed a profoundly human, psychological, and modern story. It's a 4,000-year-old message written by a real king or a scribe who knew him about a real trauma, the devastating loss of a friend. It's a manual for grief. It tells us that loss will break us. It will shatter our world. It will make us run. It will make us chase fantasies to the ends of the earth. But the only way through it, the only way to heal, is to stop running, accept the end, accept our own mortality, and build something that matters. To live. So here's the deal. We're all obsessed with this ancient mystery, the flood, the cuneiform tablets. But are we missing the key detail? The thing is, this story, pieced together by Andrew George from the dust of millennia, isn't really about the past. Thanks for watching. Did Gilgamesh really find the secret to life or just learn to accept the end? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that rewrite history.